Hello, I'm Ted Lederer of the Elliott Lewis Gallery in Vancouver, and I'm with
Laura McDonald, and we're here for It's All About Art.
Hello, today we're at the studio of artist Richard Tetrault. Hi, Richard.
Hi. Hi, Ted.
As I look around, all of these works that I see have a very urban theme to them. You've got loading cranes and ships and bridges.
There's a couple of main series that are represented here. Particularly, there's a series based on the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge, which we'll talk about, the screen that's behind me here, and also a triptych relating to that. And then there's a kind of a whole series on freighters and the inner harbor. I've been doing a lot of paintings of just industry and the inner harbor of Vancouver. So I guess that's sort of another theme that I've been touching on.
What inspired you to use that as a theme?
Well, historically, I guess I've been in East Vancouver here for 30 years, and I always love the industrial waterfront. I like the side of Vancouver that is not shown on the postcards. I think, in my sense, it's very animated, and it's got a lot of incredible energy, and things all constantly changing and shifting. And I think that that's, in a sense, is sort of the theme of this series, really, in another level, is evolution and transition. And so it's all about, kind of the changing skyline of Vancouver. And I've got like a long history of working in the East Side. I mean, I've worked at Carnegie Centre, which is a community centre at Main and Hastings. I've taught drawing there for years. Worked on the floor there, so I know a lot of the patrons of the centre. And so a lot of my work is tied up in that kind of oral history as well. I mean, that's actually where I kind of established some sort of a sense of the legends and histories of the neighborhood, and came to realize how rich it was.
So at what age did you move to Vancouver?
Well, when I went to university, actually, in the 60s. After university, I did go to Africa, Europe, spent quite a long time on the road, including to Mexico a lot. Mexico is like that's my renaissance. You know, other artists in Europe would go to Italy and be inspired probably more by the Italian masters. Right. And I was inspired by the Mexican masters.
So Rivera and
Orozco and Siqueiros and those artists, and Tamayo and Toledo and more contemporary artists, Mexican artists as well. And it just got me excited about doing murals back in the 70s, and then I got inspired by looking at Rivera and looking at those guys, and came back to Vancouver and started to explore public art and making some kind of a statement about things through murals. It's a different kind of a mindset doing murals, because very often they're collaborative and because they're in the public eye. And so I think, I'm always aware of the fact that, I'm creating something that's out there for people to look at, that they're going to be living with.
I'd like to have a look at the other side of the screen.
This screen is part of the exhibition that's coming up for you in June. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about the screen.
Sure. Well, it's a collaboration with my neighbor, Arnson, who's a metalworker and furniture maker. I just always wanted to do a series of paintings around bridges, particularly the Ironworkers Memorial, because of the significant collapse of the bridge, which happened 50 years ago, 1958. It's a very dramatic piece of Vancouver's history. I think it's the most fatalities of any industrial accident before or since for the city. The bridge was partly built, and what they call the false works, which is what holds the structure in place as they're building the actual arc of the bridge, was under-designed. And as it was cantilevered out, and it had cranes on the end of it, and you see photographs of it, it's quite dramatic. The whole thing buckled under the weight of it and collapsed into the inlet. And all these workers who were on it, over 50 workers, went down with the bridge. Mostly they drowned because of the weight of their tool belts. You have a split second to react, right? So those that managed to get their tool belts off, carrying these incredible weights, some of those survived and talked about it, and it became a kind of an oral history of the event that I became first aware of when I was teaching drawing at Carnegie Center. And I met one of these fellows who was a regular at Carnegie, and he told me the whole story about the ironworkers coming down with the bridge. So this fellow, Gary Poirier, he was an iron worker and he worked on the bridge. And so he was my first-hand account. So this is taken from a photograph of the bridge as it collapsed into the inlet. So it's a fairly loosely painted one side of the screen, where I wanted to show it just as this kind of almost like metal prehistoric animal, very primal somehow. The other side being my own kind of a bit more, my own rendition of what these ironworkers might have looked like, you know.
Let's go
a bit of a sense of the spirit.
Strong and
yeah, just that sense of
purposeful.
Resilience, you know.
It's absolutely astonishing that anyone survived at all. If
It
you get
is,
on the
it's
top,
amazing.
that bridge is huge. And I think there were 17 people killed that day, and then one diver the following day who got
Right.
tangled up.
That's right. So, yeah, it's a very dramatic event, and it's a poignant bit of history. And of course, what's interesting about working in this series was subsequently one meets people who have personal stories about it, or remember it, or, you know, were in the vicinity or in Vancouver in 1958 when it happened. So it becomes one of those, you know, pivotal kind of moments in people's lives, I think.
Your exhibition opens 5 days just before the actual 50th anniversary of the collapse of the bridge, and runs through that anniversary period, of course.
Yeah.
And we'll move on from the bridge because it's not the only theme in the exhibition. What did you call the exhibition? Or what is the exhibition
Smoke,
called?
Steel, Sky. It's more to do with urban, you know, the energy of the industrial waterfront and trains and trackside. And the smoke is symbolic of change and evolution as well. I like using smoke and wind and these kind of, you know, more ethereal aspects to suggest transition and change. Also, I, you know, use skies as being, you know, these kind of negative shapes that delineate the forms of high rises and such. But, you know, in an urban setting, we're always framing the sky with structure.
Richard, is there anything else about either about yourself, your work, the exhibition that you wanted to elucidate on?
I think we're good.
Before we go, I would like to read what's on this piece that represents the bridge. No, there was no warning unless you count the vibrations. The sudden shrug before the bridge collapsed, a bump more like the initial slippage. I felt it, all right, stomach rising into my throat. My God, I thought, it's going down. No time for philosophy, no time either for analysis. Simply, I'm going to die. And I find, like all of Richard Tetrault's urban landscapes, there is poetry in his touch and his style. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Ted Lederer, and I'm here with Devorah McDonald, and we've been in conversation with artist Richard Tetrault.
That's it.
Thank you for watching.
Bye for now.
Bye.